There we go. So thanks everybody for joining us. We're here with Coach Preston. Myself, I'm Coach Javi, and the guy with the fro right there, that's Coach Rob.
Hey.
Yeah, and Mac right there, he's our intern over at Ignite Performance. I know some of you guys are on this call through our network of friends. Is anybody here from Virginia or California on this call?
I'm from Virginia.
We got a couple of Virginia people. Okay, good to hear. So the purpose of this call today, we're going to bring somebody that we respect a lot. You guys know Daniel Hudson. Obviously, he's got a really good story, and I think he's got a lot of wisdom to share with you guys during this time. He's not just a great athlete, but he carries himself a certain way. So I want you guys to definitely take away a lot of information from him. We're going to kind of go through his story and his progression, and then at the end, we're going to leave it for a little Q&A so you guys can ask him whatever you want.
You use the term athlete very lightly.
Oh no, you're underselling yourself.
What part of Virginia are you from?
I live in Manassas, in Northern Virginia.
Nice. I grew up in Virginia Beach.
Okay. Yeah. I have a bunch of friends. I'm a junior at Hampton Sydney College. I play football down there, and I have a bunch of friends from Virginia Beach.
Nice.
So that's a good segue. I don't know, Huddy, if you want to take us away, talk about kind of your childhood growing up, and then what led you to college, and ultimately to kind of in the big leagues and where you are now.
Yeah, so I grew up, like I said, in Virginia Beach. Playing a bunch of different sports. I always say, I was a decent basketball player until everybody got more athletic than me. Then I figured I should go stand on the mound and not move too much. I was not highly recruited out of high school. I ended up going to Old Dominion in there, Virginia. Of course, after I committed there, I started getting some more looks from some bigger schools, but I figured that'd be the best opportunity for me to go play from the get-go. My freshman year, I was pitching on the weekends, pitching in all the conference series and whatnot, and that just kind of got me the experience I needed to get to kind of make the next step. After my junior year, I got drafted by the White Sox in the 5th round, and just kind of worked my way up, and I've been with 7 different teams since then. So I'm still kicking it. Kind of ancient for baseball age, but I'm still hanging in there.
So Huddy, like looking back on your childhood and your development as a youth athlete, was there anything that you can kind of look back and think that you did that helped you get to the point where you're at right now?
I think for the most, a lot of it has to do with me. I know I just joked around saying that once everybody got more athletic than me, I stayed on the mound, but I really did play pretty much everything. I didn't play organized football, but I was always outside with my friends playing pickup football or basketball. Played a little bit of high school basketball, and just kind of kept me active. I was kind of in that last generation of amateur players that didn't really be sports specific for so long. We didn't have year-round baseball. Obviously, in the Mid-Atlantic, it got pretty cold in the winter. So as soon as it got to a certain temperature, it was moved to the basketball court, and we're going to be inside for the next 4 months. So just staying active in the off seasons and not the high seasons, and obviously getting as much games and as much practice in as I could when the weather started cooperating.
Do you feel like kind of having that diverse sport background helped you?
Definitely. Obviously, being a relief pitcher, I don't really need to be the most athletic guy on the field, but there's definitely certain movements that I do on the mound that I definitely can correlate to playing different sports, whereas maybe I wouldn't be as efficient with the way I move on the mound if I didn't, play basketball or play football or something like that.
Awesome. So you got drafted 5th round. Right. And then you decided to go play pro ball, correct?
Yeah. So I was kind of always, I kind of hit a mini growth spurt after my junior year of high school. And that's when I really started to get noticed because I started throwing a lot harder. I kind of came into my body. I kind of grew into my body a little bit. I went from, I think I was like 5'9" something in my freshman year of high school. When I graduated, I was just under 6'4". So I kind of grew late. And, like I said, it just kind of, I grew into my body, and I started getting noticed a lot more. So I actually had the opportunity to go pro out of high school. I think I would have got drafted at, decent, high enough to forego college. But like I said, I was a late bloomer, and I just felt like I needed that experience at college before I was going to go out on my own and play baseball.
That makes sense. And then from the White Sox, was it the D-backs next?
Yeah. So I got drafted in 2008. I actually kind of got through the minor leagues pretty quick. I actually made my major league debut a little bit over a year later in 2009. And then went back down out of spring training the following year, 2010, and got called up right before the All-Star break, 2010. And I was up for about 3 weeks, and I got traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I was here for about 6.5 years after that.
Okay. So I'm trying to think of the timeline here because I remember that as an Arizona boy. So your first couple years with the D-backs, when did we first starting to run into some injury?
I started having some forearm elbow discomfort at the end of 2011. It was my first full season in the major leagues. I ended up throwing over 220 innings that year, which is kind of the league leader last year was, I think, 210. So I came in 5th in innings pitched that year. So that's how it used to be. Everybody used to throw a bunch of innings, and the game's kind of changed a little bit. But I threw a ton of innings my first full season, and I just never really recovered from it. I struggled out of the gate in 2012. The pain in my forearm and my elbow just kind of kept getting worse and worse until finally I couldn't throw anymore. So it's June 2000, July 2012. I had Tommy John surgery to fix the ligament in my elbow, which is pretty common, but still it's a year-plus long recovery. At the time, the protocol was kind of getting back into, big league games right around a year, 12 months. I was right on track for that. Hadn't had any setbacks. About 11 months in, I went out for my first rehab outing with the AA team, and I tore my UCL again. So I had to have Tommy John surgery for a second time. And that obviously pushed me back another year and a half or so. And then did the rehab, did everything. So September 2014, I finally made it back all the way to the big leagues and had like 4 or 5 games pitched that year. And knock on wood, since then hadn't had anything serious happen and been relatively healthy since then.
Do you mind if we kind of get into that a little bit more, like the time jump? So what was that? I mean, guys, also feel free to type in the chat if you guys have any questions. So what was that like, man? I can't imagine, what that was like to have that, do all that hard work and then have it happen again. Do you mind kind of taking us through?
Yeah, I mean, so it's just a long, tedious rehab process. You start with, literally doing forearm exercises, grip strength, getting your range of motion back. That takes about, 8 to 10 weeks to finally get all that back. Then you can go into strengthening. You're really not throwing off a mound again for 8 months after you have surgery. So it's a long, tedious process. And when I got hurt for the second time, it definitely made me contemplate, trying to figure out if I wanted to do it again. Maybe it's time to take the next step, open the next chapter of the book, see what else is out there for me, go finish school, do whatever. But I figured after, about a week, I kind of figured I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror again if I didn't give it a shot. So, sure enough, did the surgery again. And like I said, knock on wood, it hasn't happened. Nothing serious since then.
Would you say, like, what was it? Was the toughest part the mental aspect? Was it the physical
100%.
aspect?
Yeah, the physical stuff is nothing. Just going in and doing the same exercises every single day. That's the most tedious part. That's the mental aspect of knowing you're not going to be out there for over a year, watching all your team's games on TV. Knowing you can help them win, but when they're not winning or when they are, like, I should be out there. That's probably the worst part is the mental aspect of it, for sure.
Was there a time like that you had to kind of talk yourself into that positive mindset? I can imagine like I know I would be pretty down. Is there a time that you had to like talk yourself kind of into more of that positive mind frame?
Yeah, for sure. And you definitely got to lean on the people that are close to you, your friends, your family, teammates, all that stuff. It's just, that's what they're there for. They keep you going, they keep you moving forward and not looking back. And, lucky for me, Preston, you guys all know my wife and how she is. She's my rock, and she's been there through it all the time, the whole way. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would have got through without her, to be honest with you. So, and all my friends and family, same thing.
So we had the second time, John. Were you with the Pirates at this point, or
No, still with the D-backs? Yeah,
with the D-backs. That's right. Okay, and then it's the Pirates, I believe, right?
So I went after 2016. I had about 2.5 full years of healthy seasons under my belt, and I was a free agent. And so after the offseason of being a free agent, I ended up signing a 2-year deal with the Pirates. Spent 2017 with the Pirates, and then in 2018 spring training, I got traded to Tampa Bay during spring training. At the end of spring training, I got released, and then so came home, was home for about a week and a half, got signed a minor league deal with the Dodgers. Then about 3 weeks later, I got called up with the Dodgers and spent the rest of the year in the big leagues with the Dodgers. And then end of the year on the injured list was probably my biggest, scariest injury since then. Just had a little inflammation in my forearm. Thought it might be serious again, but got MRIs. It was all clean. And then signed a minor league deal with the Angels going into 2019. Got released at the end of spring training. Signed with the Blue Jays. Played in Toronto for half the season, and got traded to Washington in July of last year.
Perfect. The next jump off point, man. Like, can you tell us about that experience? Obviously, we felt like we were part of that
Yeah.
with you, but you can
Yeah,
tell
man.
us
It was a crazy 2019, man. Like I said, I got released at the end of spring training. Didn't have a job about 5 days before opening day. Things moved quick. Toronto needed some guys to help out, so I signed with Toronto. Never played outside of the country before, playing in Canada. It's not that much different, but it's still kind of a shock. And playing up there for half a year, kind of just got in this little bit of a groove, and started throwing the ball well enough to garner some trade interest, and got traded to the Nationals. At the time, I think we were in third place, and not really making too much noise. But for whatever reason, after I got traded there, we just took off and ended up winning the wild card. I was throwing some really important innings there down the stretch and closing out games, situations I had never been in before. And we got snuck into the playoffs, won the wild card game, closed out the wild card game, and then beat the Dodgers in 5 games, swept the Cardinals, and then beat the Astros in Game 7 of the World Series.
Can you take us back to that Game 7, man? Having that type of pressure, Game 7 on the mound. What was that like?
It's not like anything I've ever experienced. I kind of have this routine where I stay in the locker room and the training room for the first 3 or 4 innings, trying to get ready, because I'm probably not going to pitch till the 7th, 8th, or 9th. So, man, that place was just so loud. The locker room's under the stands, so it's a madhouse in there. And so walking out to the bullpen in the 4th inning, pretty much I was on call from the 5th inning on. I was standing on the mound warming up from the 6th through the 9th, because literally 3 times I had the next hitter. If the guy didn't get through the inning, I was going to go face the next guy. So I had to be ready for the last 4 or 5 innings. I probably threw 120 pitches in the bullpen, just trying to stay loose. And, luckily we scored some runs there at the end, and kind of gave us a little bit of breathing room. We were only up 2 going into the 9th, and I think we ended up winning 6-2. So to score a couple extra runs and kind of give us some breathing room, took some pressure off, but still, bottom of the 9th, Game 7 of the World Series. I mean, that's about as pressure packed as it gets, and you can't really simulate that of pressure and adrenaline. So trying to focus all that adrenaline into every pitch and just go from there.
And so right after you guys win, like, to go from where you started, the stuff you've been through, to there, like, what did you feel like? Was that redemption for you? Was that, what went through your head at that moment?
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit of redemption, but it just kind of clarified my choice to try to keep going. It made all that, the the tedious, the strenuous 2.5 years of rehab, all the releases, all that stuff. It just that's why you play the game. That's why you do what you do. That's why you put in all the hard work in the off seasons to be in that moment with your teammates to celebrate a world championship. So, I mean, that's why you play the game, and that's why you do all that stuff.
That's awesome, man. I'm gonna switch views here. So what I wanted to ask you another question, and then we can get to the open Q&A for everybody. But looking back on you're 32, 33,
just turned 33. Yep.
Which is like 63, right? In baseball.
100%. Yeah.
I'm older than you actually. So.
I'm one of the old guys.
But like, what would 33-year-old Huddy say to 21-year-old Huddy? Give himself some advice.
I don't know. I'll probably just tell myself, hey man, you're gonna go through some tough stuff, but it's gonna be worth it in the end. Like just keep grinding, keep pushing forward. Don't look back too far. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good stuff, a lot of really cool stuff for you, in the future. So just keep pushing forward no matter what happens. It's gonna suck, but it's gonna pay off at the end.
And then the other thing, if you could touch on, you, I think, know more than just about anybody, any athlete, the importance of taking care of your body.
Yeah.
Is that like how much time do you invest into that aspect?
I mean, it's every day for me. Back, like I said, when I was, 33-year-old me could talk to 21-year-old me, it'd probably be take care of your body a little bit more because you're going to be hurting when you're 33. But, I mean, it's just, back, when you're that old, you could just jump on the mountain and start throwing, and you can just jump straight into a workout. You don't really have to warm up or do anything in between. But literally every day of my season is I take care of the little stuff before games, in between outings, before BP, before the game to make sure that I'm ready every night. We're trying to we talk a lot in baseball about control the controllables, so that's one of the big things for me is making sure I check every box every single day so that when I know I go into the game, I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm going to be on my game because I took care of everything I need to take care of.
Love that. Control the controllables, man. That's awesome.
So, Hob, can I jump in right there?
Absolutely.
So, Huddy, first off, happy belated birthday.
Yes.
Talking about, your preparation, like now you understand how important it is. Younger Huddy, you have 2 Tommy John. Now you come back and you're playing some of the best baseball. What was it part of that physical preparation that changed you the most? Was it focusing more on mobility? Was it changing the way you strength train? Was it starting a different program? Was it following a strict routine? What would you say would be the biggest change you made?
I think it was a little bit of all of it. There were some mechanical changes. I wasn't the most efficient guy on the mound. I kind of just got on there and threw. If you look at video of me from when I was just breaking the league, 22, 23 years old, I mean, it got the job done, but it wasn't pretty, and I kind of took it for granted that it was always going to work, So I got hurt the first time. I was like, oh, it's the UCL. It's going to be, a year. I'll be good to go, for a while. These things last for 8, 10 years after the fact. So I don't really need to change anything crazy, but sure enough, it blew out again. And that's kind of when I was like kind of all on board with whatever strength and conditioning coaches were telling me, whatever the training staff was telling me I needed to change. I just kind of put all the chips in the middle and just said, let's do this. And it might not look totally different on the mound, but it's a hell of a lot different, with just the way my body responds to it for sure.
When you had that growth spurt, did you have a big spike in your velo or like?
I didn't play any varsity until my junior year. Like I said, I was probably 5'9", 5'10" my first 2 years of high school. I don't even know. I didn't throw hard enough for anybody to even put a radar gun on me. So I don't know how hard I was throwing. I was always that kind of taught me how to pitch though. I was always pretty good. So I always try to figure out how to get through games without, there was guys bigger than me that threw harder. They could just throw it by everybody. I had to actually kind of pitch. So when I finally hit that growth spurt, started throwing, high 80s, low 90s or whatever it was, I felt like I had a step ahead of everybody now because I actually knew how to pitch with that stuff. Whereas those guys, that's why I feel like I went into college and kind of really was pretty good from the get-go because I finally had the stuff to quote unquote dominate, but I also knew how to pitch. So it kind of really helped me.
That makes sense. I wanted to ask you too, man, with the current situation, obviously, I mean, the fact that we're able to get you on the call, right, that's a blessing for us, but
Right.
Normally that wouldn't be the case. You'd be a busy man right now. How are you handling this situation mentally? Like, how are you preparing for knowing that you don't know when your season is if it's gonna happen this year, or when it is?
It's tough, man. Luckily, man, I'm blessed to kind of be in a situation where, I'm not exactly, I don't want to, this is going to sound weird, but there are guys that are not in my situation who need these paychecks. We're not getting paid right now. The teams aren't making money, so they can't pay us. So luckily I don't have as big as a mental strain as some probably do. They're really, maybe these guys put a down payment on a house in the offseason thinking that they're going to get paid all year next year, something like that. I don't have anything like that. So I'm lucky in that aspect, but it is weird. I've caught myself, especially last weekend, we were supposed to have our opening series in Washington and be like, man, we were supposed to raise a championship banner today, or I was supposed to get my ring today, kind of like that. It was a little difficult to get through last weekend, but like I said, I got three young kids. They're keeping me on my toes. They're keeping me busy, and I'm actually more tired right now than I was in my third cup of coffee. So, so I'm not used to running around the yard all morning with the kids and swimming all day. So it's definitely a different aspect for sure.
Got a question here. You guys feel free to type in these questions, or we're gonna open it up to discussion. But from Carter. His question for you is, what's the biggest thing you wish you knew at our age that would have helped your process through your career into the MLB? And then there's a second question, so I'll wait till.
I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, just about my routine and stuff. I wish I would have had the information that I have now back then, with whether it's preparation, whether it's shoulder work in between outings, whether it's how to work out, what type of workouts are you doing? Are they really functional for being a relief pitcher? I got to be on my game for hopefully 15 pitches or less. I don't really need the huge stamina to go out and throw 100 pitches anymore. There's certain aspects of my workouts that I used to do when I was a starter that I don't really need to do anymore. So I wish I would have had that type of information when I was 17, 18, 20 years old, because I was basically just doing whatever. Like when I went to college, we had our strength coach. We had one strength coach, and he was a football guy. So throwing a bunch of weight around and all this stuff to get as strong as possible. That's great, but it's not really functional. I wish I was doing more functional stuff, back in the day. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but.
And then the second part of that question is, as a pitcher, what do you enjoy from a catcher when you're throwing, or what do you want to see from a catcher? That's a good question, Carter.
That's a good question. Every catcher's different, and every pitcher's different too. So I think just the information, like the catcher knowing me, who I am as a pitcher, and what I like to do, really helps me get in sync with the catcher. Him knowing what, where all of my pitches play the best in the strike zone, what hitters they play the best to. I know that, but it's easy to get on the same page when he knows that as well. So I would say just know the guy that's on the mound, even if it's the eighth pitcher of the game, or if it's the starting pitcher in the eighth inning. Like you still know the guy. Make sure you're on the same page with them, and just give a nice big easy target to throw to.
On that note, with the catcher-pitcher relationship, in between, back in the day, because now you're more on the reliever side, in between the innings, are you guys, talking game plan? Are you, kind of stay away from me? What type of relationship do you guys have during the game?
During the game, like I said, maybe back in the day when I was a starter, maybe, you know, kind of feel your way through a lineup the first time, get a feel for what's working, what's not working. And then you just kind of chit chat in between innings. You know, catcher's got a hit too, so maybe he's not really into having a big conversation about any of that stuff. But you know, I think it's just all give and take, and it's a lot of trust as well. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be times where we have a conversation trying to get on the same page, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of that stuff can wait for after the game, especially if what's been done. You know, in my situation, I'm coming in, I'm getting 3 outs, so for the most part, when I go in the dugout, I'm probably not going back out. So we can have that conversation after the game or before the game the next day, typically.
I got a question for you. So you've obviously had a lot of experiences with different coaches and different coaching styles. Like, is there one particular style that resonated with you?
Not really. I've always been, I don't know if I'm to my own horn or not, but I always feel like I've been pretty coachable no matter who the coach is. I think that's the biggest thing for athletes, just be coachable. Don't get set in your ways too much. There's always stuff you can learn. There's always stuff that you can do better, whether or not you're the number 1 prospect in, you know, the minor leagues or your prospect number 1200, you know, there's always something you can learn. There's always ways you can get better. So just even if it's something you don't think is going to help you, just keep your ears open and maybe there's something that resonates with you. Maybe something clicks 2 weeks later, you know, you never know. So just try to be coachable. And I wouldn't say there's any one style of coach that's been better for me, but you know, I just felt like I have a good relationship with coaches who I kind of treat them as like a parent relationship, you know, like sometimes you need a friend, but sometimes you need a coach. Sometimes you need a parent. Like I don't need a friend to tell me what to do to get better. I need a coach to really say, this is what you got to do, you know? So kind of like that. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
I think it does. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you and I, you know, we have history. You know, we've walked through that. You know, that the whole injury thing and how you're feeling. How much would you say that just focusing on the little things like making sure your mobility is straight, making sure that you're strong in places that you're not normally strong, how much would you say that has helped propel you to be comfortable to go out there and do what you did?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helped. I mean, like maybe 10 years ago, you know, if I pitched and I didn't check all my boxes, you know, I would wake up not feeling that sore. But now if I don't check all those boxes, man, and I pitch that night, if I wake up, I feel it in spots that I shouldn't feel it, you know? So I kind of going through that a couple times is like, all right, I need to really get back into my routine and get back on it. So there's, like I said, doing the little things is really pays off for you, especially in a game like we play. It's 160 games. Well, I don't know how many games this year, but 162 games typically. And, you know, it's every day. So it's just, you got to, no matter how tedious, no matter how monotonous it is, you got to get it done.
We got a question from Kai Taylor, the legend, the mullet himself. He wants to know, since you played both in the AL and NL, which league do you prefer and why? And you did win a Silver Slugger award, correct?
I did, yeah. So in that regard, I think I'm a little bit biased. The NL game a little bit more, just the strategy and stuff behind it. It's a little different. Knowing obviously the lineup are not as potent because you gotta, you know, you typically have a couple utility guys who aren't going to kill you off the bench and a pitcher you got to pitch to. Maybe not so much in my aspect anymore because I'm a reliever, so I'm definitely most likely not going to face a pitcher. But just the strategy behind the game, the way the game's managed, I kind of prefer the NL a little bit more. But I think sooner or later I have a feeling that we're going to have DH in both leagues, but I don't know when that's going to be, if that's going to be in my lifetime or what, but I have a feeling it's going to happen.
Huddy, because I know you and I talked about, can you kind of walk me through that last pitch, just how the feeling, what you went like, because I know you said it's just like hard to put into words, but like
right.
what did you feel after you went ahead and struck that guy out for the last time and ended up, you know, closing out?
Yeah, so I can kind of walk you through the whole inning. But so I'm warming up. I know I got the ninth. I got the top of the lineup coming up. We got pretty much the heart of their order, you know, coming up. Like I said, having the extra 2 runs that we scored in the ninth really helped. with my mentality. You know, I kind of went in there, just go right, thinking to myself, just go right at them, and you know, whatever happens, happens. You got a guy coming in behind you, and something gets crazy. But yeah, I mean, I just, like I said, I went in there just trying to get ahead of guys, just throw strikes, try not to be too nervous. I literally told myself, try not to throw hard, because the adrenaline stuff going into that is your stuff's gonna be there no matter what. So I told myself, try not to throw hard. And it's like I said, it was still coming out really hot, and got the first out, and it kind of just, this big weight kind of felt like it was off my shoulders. Got the guy to pop up to second base, and I still got 2 hitters to go, but going into the inning, I was actually only supposed to face the first 2 guys. We had a lefty warming up, Doolittle. He was supposed to come in and face Brantley for the last guy, the lefty-lefty matchup, but I ended up striking out Altuve. So I'd only thrown 5 pitches, and I got 2 outs. And so I'm honestly kind of almost checking out, because I'm expecting the manager to be coming out because that was the plan. So I get the ball back from the third baseman, and I kind of just look at the dugout, and he's not coming. And for whatever reason, me and him just locked eye. He pointed at me, "You got it." So I was like, "All right, lock it back in." And sure enough, I was able to kind of weave through. You know, Brantley's a really good hitter, and he almost hit a homer off me. He pulled it foul, but I kind of felt like I threw him a bunch of fastballs away. So got to a 3-2 count, and my catcher called fastball again. I shook him off, and he called fastball again. I shook him off again, and then he called slider, and I said, "Yep, that's the one." And I just tried to throw just a really good slider, and luckily I put it in the exact perfect spot. And like I said, after it, I couldn't even tell you what I was thinking afterwards. I just turned around, chucked my glove, and just jumped in the catcher's arms.
Yeah, that was awesome. You could tell you didn't know exactly what to do. That was fantastic.
Yeah, it gives me chills every time I see that, man, because you just know your story, man. It's amazing, bro.
What is that like, the mindset to go from a starter to like a closer? Because it has to be 2 totally different things.
So I was that was actually one of the more difficult things I've done in my career. There's just a different mindset you have to have coming out of the bullpen, especially late in the game. You know, you're only getting 3 or 4 outs. You got to have your stuff. Your stuff has got to be there, like, no matter what. Like, there's no feeling your way through it. You know, it's just it's a different type of pitching. And, you know, when I was a starter, I never really watched a ton of video. I kind of felt, like I said, felt my way through a lineup based on the swings guys were taking. That's kind of how I got through it. As a reliever, it was like, man, I really got to get, like, I need to strike everybody out, basically. I need to have all my stuff to be on point from the get-go. And I think that was the hardest thing for me to get into my mind was that. But once I did, it kind of clicked, and, you know, it's kind of taken off from there.
If I can add a second question to the mental side again, you know, we're really big on routines. You know, I know every pitcher has their routine. So would you mind, you know, kind of walking us through from the morning of, you know, do you have to wear a certain thing? Do you have to do, like, eat a certain thing for breakfast? So what is your routine like through the day leading up to a game? And I guess we can kind of dial into that game, you know, the World Series. You know, did you change anything? Did you keep everything on part? You know, did you, like, talk us through that routine if you don't mind?
Yeah, it kind of evolves throughout a season, just kind of based on how I'm feeling. I definitely try to, like I said, control what I can control. So, you know, we play a lot of games at night, so which means I'm up late. Back in the day when I was first coming up, I would sleep late. No matter, you know, when I went to bed, I was probably waking up around noon, especially if I was on the road, you know. But I just kind of got into this routine where no matter what time I went to bed the night before, even if we played 18 innings or whatever, I got to the hotel at 4 a.m. I'm going to set my alarm for 10. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go get breakfast. If I'm tired after breakfast, I'll go home, take a little bit of a nap, and then I'm going to go to the field. So that kind of evolved into not necessarily eating the same things every day, but making sure I'm eating the right things. I don't have the cleanest diet in the world, but if I go in and eat, you know, a stack of pancakes in the morning and then go to the ballpark, I feel like crap, you know? So I'm trying to stay away from, especially season, I'm trying to stay away from those heavy carbs and stuff in the morning. Yeah, I'm just trying to get myself to the next meal. You know, I'm not trying to load up in the morning because I want to make sure I get another meal in when I get to the ballpark. So if I'm full, now all of a sudden I'm not going to eat anything when I get there, and it just kind of throws everything out of whack, you know? So just making sure I'm doing the right things in the morning, checking those boxes, like I said, and then the kind of pregame stuff kind of evolves based on how I'm feeling. Like I said, if I don't do certain things, then I know I'm going to feel it the next day. So there's like probably 5 or 6 big things that I make sure I do every single day. And then if I pitch the day before, there's a couple other things I add in.
To build off that, how do you adjust your routine from playing on the East Coast, like in DC, to then going to the West Coast, playing a game out there, especially in such a short distance between the games? So it'll be a couple of days, or how do you adjust for that?
Good question. It's all based on how I'm feeling, like I said, but you want to try to get yourself on that time zone as quick as possible. So, you know, if we're going from west to east, which is, you know, we're losing 3 hours, typically we'll have an off day the next day, but I still try to get up normal time in the morning to make sure I jump right back on that East Coast time. And the same thing, vice versa, going the other way, whether it's, you know, we gained 3 hours going from Washington to LA. So I got 3 hours on everybody there. I'm still going to go to bed at the right time, and I'm going to get up in the morning and go get breakfast.
I have a question about so what helped you navigate the minors so quickly, and what are some tips to help you get through the minors?
Yeah, I can't really say it's one thing. For whatever reason, man, that year I just had like even the years I've had in the big leagues, it was like the best I've ever thrown the baseball. It's crazy. Like typically, especially starting pitchers, they typically don't jump like I jumped. But so out of spring training, what they have what they call is like a trickle down effect. So when guys get sent out of big league camp, those guys go to like AAA, and then some guys drop down to AA, and it's just trickle down. So I was thinking I was going to go to A ball out of spring training. Trickle down happens. I end up going to low A. So I was there for only 4 starts. I was supposed to go to high A. So then I jumped up and I pitched really well. And then they had an injury at AA. So I got moved up because I was pitching so well. And then AA is probably the best I've ever thrown. So then same thing happened in AAA. They moved me up. I threw really well again. And they just kept promote me. And every time they did, I just pitched better. It was kind of bizarre. And, you know, I would say my path to the big leagues is not typical. I mean, guys get moved a little bit quicker nowadays, but for the most part, I would say the minor leagues suck. They're brutal. You know, you're playing in front of 100 fans in these big stadiums. You're going 12 bus rides. I mean, it's brutal, but those are the types of things where you develop relationships with teammates. You develop a relationship with coaches on those bus rides. You know, you're playing cards till morning on a bus. You're doing all that stuff. And that's the stuff that makes you the ball player that you are. It makes you appreciate when you get to the big league, you get to these, these fancy private planes and flying everywhere. It makes you appreciate those bus rides a little bit more.
Carter, you want to ask your question?
Yeah. So my question is, who's the best catcher you've thrown to, and like why? What separated him?
I would say, he's one of the better receivers in the game now. I think he rates at the top. His name's Tyler Flowers with the Braves. He was my roommate in AA and AAA with the White Sox. We came up in the minor leagues together. We're actually still really good friends. But he was always regarded as a bad defensive catcher, and he worked hard and made himself into probably the top 3 receiver in the game. He doesn't throw the ball great, but he steals so many strikes for guys. He gets this low, he works from bottom of the strike zone up. You know, he's never reaching for balls. I would say he's probably my favorite catcher I've ever thrown to, for sure.
If you haven't guessed, Carter is a catcher. So
yeah,
you stole it. I was just gonna say that.
Figured it out by now. Growing up, did you have like any like players or pitchers that you modeled your game after, or anybody you looked up to?
Yeah, I was a huge Braves fan growing up. you know, I grew up in Virginia. The games were always on TBS every single night. So obviously my favorite overall player was Chipper Jones. He was my favorite player, but pitcher I think was, I mean, every Braves fan, kids that was going to say Greg Maddux. So he was a favorite pitcher to watch, especially when I first started getting into like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to focus on. Maddox was kind of on the tailor end of his career, not throwing very hard. So he relied on that command, which said was the biggest thing until I hit that growth spurt and started throwing hard. So he kind of inspired me like, hey man, I can still get guys out even if I don't throw hard. So I would say, you know, Greg Maddux for sure.
So you kind of started like Maddox, but then you finished like Smoltz, right? You started throwing cheese.
Yeah, I started throwing a lot harder. Actually, you know, now I'm throwing hardest I've ever thrown. But like I said, it's a different mentality being in the bullpen, but also, no, I still feel like I know how to pitch a little bit, so it does help me out a lot.
That's awesome. Guys, feel free to fire any questions you have. You can unmute yourself and ask away.
Well, guys, he's running out of coffee.
There's always more.
Anything
So,
you
man, I got a question real quick for you. So earlier you kind of mentioned how you feel like maybe something that contributed to your success was how with the different seasonalities, it was really hard to play year round where you're from. I know it's kind of a hot topic these days with baseball players, with club being year round and whatnot. So I just want to see what your thoughts and advice were for players who are kind of stuck in that system where it maybe feels like they have to play year round in order to get the looks that they need to go to college.
Yeah, it's a really, really tough situation. I was kind of like that first generation of the showcase kids, you know, where they, you know, you go out, travel down to Florida, you play in these showcases. But it was kind of a unique situation for me where my family didn't. Those were expensive, you know. Those are expensive to get into, expensive to get on those teams. So I was almost forced to not do stuff. And, you know, it is definitely a difficult thing because especially like I said, I live out in Arizona. They play year round, even in the summer. I feel like you should even take the summers off here because it's so hot, you know. I would say, I mean, just if something is sore and you don't want to play that weekend, I feel like it's a no-brainer to just be like, look, I need a week off or something, you know. It's just, and if you're not sore or ever sore, I would say it's definitely a big thing. There are rehab facilities, there are strength coaches all over the place that can help you recover nowadays. I had never even heard of a rehab facility until I got hurt. You know, it's just like I never knew that those were a thing. So I feel like a lot of different resources to help kids who feel like they have to play games, play in these tournaments to get looks, to take advantage of. Now, whether or not, you know, that's another aspect of spending more money, but I feel like that's a thing for kids to try to do is really take care of your body, especially if you're playing year round.
I think for you, it's, you know, patience, right? You just said you're a late bloomer. You know, you went from more of a control guy to throwing pretty hard. So it seems like you were pretty patient during the process. You kind of let yourself develop. Yeah,
for sure. And I would say there are a lot of really good guidelines, especially for pitchers nowadays. And I feel like coaches have a more of an idea of how to manage kids' workloads these days. You can have a bigger squad. You can have a bigger team. You're not throwing the same guys every 4 or 5 days. You have other kids that can kind of share the load. I remember the first team I played on, I feel like we had like 11 players, you know, so we had 2 guys on the field and then 2 guys on the bench. It was, that was like kind of the norm. I have a picture of teams, literally 10 or 11 players, you know, so it was just, I feel like I was throwing like every other game, it felt like. I feel like that really did have a huge impact on when I first got, you know, when I started feeling that stuff. I feel like that played a huge thing. And also when I went to college, I was very stubborn. I wasn't feeling anything in my arm. So I was throwing 130 pitches a game no matter what. And, you know, I was the best pitcher on my college team. So my coach was just riding me as long as he could because they get paid to win. They don't get paid to keep guys healthy. And I think that had a big influence on, why I got hurt at the beginning of my career.
We got another question sent, and we have somebody that would like to know what's been your favorite team to play for and why?
Obviously, winning a World Series, that probably takes the cake for me. We had a very special group, man. Like the game is trending younger, and we had the oldest team in baseball last year. So I feel like that was a big thing for guys that are in situations like me who are kind of in the second 9 of their careers, kind of show that we can still get the job done because, let's face it, there are, younger, cheaper options out there than guys like us. So for us to kind of go out there, we all kind of had this, I wouldn't say it was a chip on our shoulder, but we all kind of played like that because we knew we could still play. We knew we could still get the job done. And we wanted to show everybody that. So I would say that there was kind of this unique bond that we had last year on the Nationals. But I will say that living and playing in Phoenix year-round is the best setup in the league.
There we go. Good answer.
Sleeping in my own bed 280 nights out of the year is not, not a bad thing.
It would be nice if you were in the Cactus League, though, right? That'd be even nicer.
Yeah. Spring training in Florida is not good.
Yeah, I've heard. Have you heard about what they're considering? Right?
Yeah, I've read all that stuff. I don't know how it's gonna work. There's just too much stuff, man. I think it's forced. It's not a good. People need to get healthy. We need to be focused on getting people healthy. If they come out with some kind of new test that's readily available to everybody, and they're giving that to us to make sure we're good to play, and every other person on the planet has access to the same test, then I'm good with it. But we need to focus on. I feel like we need to focus on getting past all this stuff before we even start mentioning trying to play again. I think that's the most important part.
I think I have a question. I'm thinking how to phrase it. But so obviously with some of the stuff that's happened in the off season, I think you're a man of great integrity, but not everybody necessarily plays by the same rules. How important is that to you versus winning? Like, losing but having your integrity versus winning and not?
Yeah, that's always something I've kind of taken pride in. I've always taken pride in playing the game the right way. Not disrespecting anybody on the field. I've always kind of taken pride in that. Now there's a difference between disrespecting people and showing emotion. I think emotion is fine. We need that game, but at the same time, when it crosses the line into disrespecting people and disrespecting the game, I think that's where I draw the line. But everybody's got a different line for that. Some move their lines more than others, and I feel like I kind of do that. There's stuff that happens on the field that doesn't really bother me that may bother somebody else. So but like with the integrity and all that stuff, playing the game the right way, I think is a big thing. And stuff you're probably referring to the stuff with the Astros, the cheating, the video stuff. We beat them. It didn't bother me that much. I might be singing a different tune if we got beaten Game 7, but obviously they crossed the line for a lot of people, and they got to pay for it. They got to deal with the consequences of those acts.
Awesome. Guys, I want to be respectful of Huddy's time, so feel free to fire any last questions you might have for him. He's been very gracious so far, so ask away, guys. If not, we'll just keep, driving the conversation.
I just got one more quick question. What's it like playing with Juan Soto?
It's cool, man. He's a special character, man. He's obviously, he just turned 21 years old during the World Series, so me and him don't particularly have a ton in common just because there's a big age difference there, but he's one of the most talented players I've ever seen in terms of just general baseball skill and how smart he is in the way he plays baseball. You don't see that combination in 21-year-olds very often. There's plenty of guys with his talent that come up that are just so so raw, talented, and they get by just based off how good they are. But what pushes him over the line, for me, is how smart of a baseball player he is. You don't see 20-year-olds take the types of at bats that he does. You don't see 21-year-olds unless you're Mike Trout, with over 400 on base percentage. It just doesn't happen in today's game anymore with how often guys swing and how guys swing. He's just got this old school baseball player mystique about him. It's a lot of fun to watch.
You said you played football, right, Huddy?
Not organized.
Organized. Okay.
Not organized.
Just tackle football in the park.
Just tackle football in the park?
Yeah.
I was going to ask
just messing around. I never played one snap of organized football. So
Okay.
I always watch it on TV and be like, man, I wish I would have played. And then I watch one big hit and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
You made the right choice.
Two words: guaranteed contract.
Yes.
You made the right decision.
You made the right choice.
Yeah, you made the absolute right decision. Who is so like? I know Soto's one of the most talented players, but who do you think's been the most like talented guy you've ever shared a field with or played on the same team with?
Well, I was in spring training with the Angels last year, so Mike Trout, for sure.
Sarah, what's up?
Yeah. Mike Trout for sure is the most talented baseball player I've ever seen. I've ever played. I've ever played with. But I mean, there's a lot of really good young players. I would say, my favorite pitcher to watch now, he plays for the Dodgers, name's Walker Buehler. Obviously watching Clayton Kershaw. I mean, he's probably the best of our generation. There's a lot of different guys that I can put on that list for sure.
Oh! There you go. Hold on, let me see that.
Where are you going with that?
Hey, look at that. That is dope. That is dope. Okay.
Yeah,
don't drop it. That is amazing.
To the place when you reopen.
You have to.
You can
Yes.
sit there for a week or two. You can babysit.
I got you.
Yeah. Take a selfie with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Perfect.
You have to bring your ring in when you.
Oh, you
get
have
that
to. I
too.
got to see that. I got to
see it too. I haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
The
We
ring.
we got a question from Landon. What can a catcher do to make a relief pitcher feel more comfortable and ready?
Like I said, it's just it's all about being on the same page. We have these things now, obviously with analytics and stuff. It makes it a little bit easier. We literally have catchers will have wristbands on their and every time a new pitcher comes in, the coach gives them a new card to put in his wristband, and it's stuff versus these hitters and all this stuff's on it. So it's a little bit easier nowadays. But like I said, just knowing what the relief does best, whether it's his slider is the best slider, is his best pitch. We're going to go to that, especially if he's facing the middle of the order. We're gonna ride this pitch. Or he's been catching the whole game. This hitter hasn't caught up to an inside fastball all game. Let's try to hammer that one home. It's just paying attention and being on the same page as your relievers for sure. Because like I said, we're hopefully only in there for 15 pitches, and we got to have our A stuff from the get-go with those 15 pitches.
All right, guys. I think we've got time for. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to kind of I figured we were going to be done soon, so I just wanted to make a kind of like a statement reminder, kind of recap on something that Huddy said that to me is super important. Obviously he's had a crazy journey through his career, but if you think back when he was talking about high school, how he was a late bloomer. And nowadays you have 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds doing driveline, heavy ball programs, chasing velo, but sometimes you have to wait for your body when it's ready. He said he wasn't getting any love from the pros and colleges, and he didn't, start to bloom until his senior year. So, kind of a take-home message to you guys is just trust the process, and nothing's going to happen overnight where, you just have to keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting. And, good things are going to come to people who put the time in. And, the guy next to you, he might have had, his age might be 16, 17, but chronologically, but what's going on internally, he might be just a late bloomer. So, I just wanted to recap on saying, trust the process. nothing happens overnight. And, sometimes hard work, you just gotta ride it out, and your time's going to come.
That's a good point.
I don't know. How do you, if you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, everybody, lighting up a radar gun is how you get looks, right? But there's something to be said for being able to pitch and get guys out if you don't have that. Like I said, if it comes at a later time or it doesn't come, but if you can still get guys out, you're going to get looked at, whether it's a junior college, D2, D3, D1. The scouts are going to come find you no matter where you are. So, it doesn't cost a major league team any money to send a coach on Podunk Midwest League team to come watch you throw if you're getting guys out. Like, they don't care. If you get guys out, it doesn't matter how you get them out. It's great, cool to throw 95, 96. It's cool to have this huge wipeout slider. But if you do something special, if you do something unique, and you get guys out doing it your way, you're going to get looks no matter what. So, like I said, there's a time and a place for trying to strengthen your arm and throw harder. The driveline stuff is great, but if you're not sound mechanically, if you're not sound in the way you pitch and knowing how to pitch, what's the point? It's just the driveline, the heavy ball stuff. That's all great, but you really got to be in tune with your mechanics to be able to repeat what's necessary to throw a 2-pound ball as hard as you can. So if you don't have that stuff, all that lined up and mapped out, then there's no point.
That's a great point. Guys, does anybody have any final question before we let Huddy get back to hanging out with this trophy and his family?
Yeah, hanging out with the trophy.
Okay. One thing I wanted to make a point that I've noticed in Huddy, and since he's been here, and Preston knows him, better than I do. But one thing I've noticed with him and other elite athletes, and however you define athlete, is that he clearly takes pride in more than just being a baseball player. Like, when he comes in with his family, he takes pride in being a good husband and being a good dad. So for all the athletes out there, take pride in what you do, not just what you do on the field. So that's one thing that's always stood out to me about Huddy. So toot your own horn there on that.
Yeah,
we got a lot of respect for you.
Appreciate it, man. Like I said, the term athlete is used very lightly.
Yeah.
You guys have seen me move in there. It's not pretty, but it gets the job done sometimes.
Get the job done, man. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all that matters.
Well, guys, appreciate your time. Huddy, thanks for coming on.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys. That was fun.
Thank you.
All right, Huddy, have a good day,
Have a good one.
See you guys.